Good evening, Thunder Wizards. Alright, so today I want to talk to you about how to access 100% of your energy body. Bear in mind that if you do access 100% of your energy body, you will phase out of existence. So it is a goal. That's not something I myself have even come close to achieving, but I am aware of the concept, and I can share with you what's most important about it. It's not what you think. I'm going to say this, if you were to access 100% of your energy body right now, it would probably be one of the most horrifying experiences of your existence. And that's because you would be so vulnerable to your emotions. You would be vulnerable to all of your emotions. You would be vulnerable and aware of all of your thoughts and your feelings. And today we're going to talk about expectations. And, I'm throwing words around in a haphazard way, but you can put expectations along with agenda. I've talked about knowing what your agenda is, and but it really has to do with your desires. I've talked a lot about assumptions and how it's absolutely imperative that you know what your assumptions are. Because if you don't know what your assumptions are, then you have no idea if you are even able to think objectively about anything. And assumptions and agendas and expectations are all wrapped up together in this really messy little thing. And so even if people want to be, like I talked about in the last video, how there's a lot of people who walk around throwing out the word critical thinking. And I can promise you that just because they, are lovers of science, that many of them are not critical thinkers because they are completely clueless to their emotional attachments, their emotional agendas, and their expectations, and even their assumptions. They can look at other people, like they can look at religious people, and see that religious people are operating from false assumptions, and that they have emotional agendas and they have fears, and that those emotional agendas and those false assumptions are driving all of their erroneous conclusions and their destructive behavior. They can see that in them, but they can't see any of that in themselves, especially if they're self-righteous. I won't get into that. I tried to get into that last time, and I sort of stumbled all over myself. But we're talking about having access to 100% of your energy body. So I'm going to talk to you about some teachings of Carlos Castaneda. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was like the New Age, even though he wasn't technically New Age at all, but he was seen as like the New Age guru of the 80s and 90s I think, more than anything else. And he has since died and been discredited as a fraud, which he was, and as a really destructive hypocrite and a cult leader. But his writings are absolutely brilliant, incredibly powerful, except for his last 2 or 3 books, which he got off into some nonsense. But his first books, they are fictional, even though he presented them as being nonfiction and promoted that lie and used it to promote himself. But they are fictional. And he did take from existing spiritual practices like Taoist and Hindu and others, and he falsely presented it as Native American. And then he came up with some things. I don't know where he came up with some of them, but even though they're not accurate, they are absolutely brilliant methods of explaining what we're going to talk about. So, Carlos Castaneda claimed to have been apprenticed by a Mexican Native American, what he called a sorcerer, which we would call a shaman. And his first couple of books, he does some hallucinogenics, and so it becomes about that. And then very quickly, thankfully, like in the second and third book, I think, his fictional teacher Don Juan tells him that taking hallucinogenics are for idiots. That you take them to crack yourself open so that you can experience the other realms. And then he goes through this method of achieving, what we would say, achieving 100% awareness. And it has to do with achieving full awareness and use of your energy body. And he talked about this, again, it's a nonsense concept, it doesn't exist. But he talked about this concept, which again is a brilliant way of helping us to see on a metaphorical level, a symbolic level, what's really going on. And he talked about what do we call a shift of, see now I forgot the words. The words are, anyway, he basically said that we have this ball that moves up and down what we would think of as our spinal column. And wherever this ball is, it determines your perception. And he means it in like a really intense way. Like if you shift that, I wish I could remember. If anybody remembers what he called that thing, that ball. You have to see yourself as like this ball of light. That you're this energetic ball of light, and inside is this ball. Inside the ball is this ball that moves up and down. And so this three-dimensional experience that you're having here, seeing me with a head and two arms and two legs and shoulders and 2 eyes and nostrils and mouth, that is the result of a very specific placement of this energy ball, this perception ball. Assemblage point, thank you. The assemblage point. That's the reason why I was struggling with such a great word. The assemblage point is a point where this ball moves up and down and energy comes in through this assemblage point, and it assembles your perception of reality. And so according to him, if the assemblage point moves in or up or down, then you will phase out of this existence and you will reappear in some other completely different world, where all of the rules are different and you may look completely differently. And so it wasn't just that your perception changes, man. It's like you go into a completely different world. Now, that's not really what happens, but there's a lot of truth to that. And the idea that we absolutely create our own reality through it's more than just our passive perception, which is where it gets, you can get locked into changing my perception, man. No, it's not like that. It's more than that. But what I want to get to is that, according to him, in his fictional reality that he created, what a sorcerer does, which is really just another word of saying a shaman, what a shaman does is a shaman seeks to have control over that assemblage point. And if he is what we would consider to be a dark wizard or a dark sorcerer, then he or she seeks to be able to influence and affect the movement of the assemblage point of other people. And then he has power. And so this would be somebody who would be seen as a dark wizard. But then he goes on to say that people who do that are not impeccable, meaning they will never achieve full awareness because they will get trapped in what he calls indulging. It's beautiful. The words that he used are absolutely brilliant because that's exactly what it is. And, one of the reasons that I come down so hard on victims is for this very reason. I mean, people who have a victim mentality. It's for this very reason. It's because to be a victim and to adopt a victim mentality, to assume that you are a victim, to choose to believe that is indulging. Indulgence, the word indulgence has the feeling of somebody like some big fat piece of crap who just sits around and smells his armpits and just eats, garbage all day and farts and watch television and just indulges and does, accomplishes nothing. Because it is, in other words, it takes energy. It takes commitment and energy and repeated action to stay there. In other words, it takes more energy to be a victim than it does to actually go and improve and enjoy your life. Which again is another reason why when people complain to me about not having enough money for little things, like some of the things I got in here for $40 or $50 or $100, and people say I don't have the money for that. It's very hard for me to have empathy for that because your state of victimhood is, if we put it in the parlance of Carlos Castaneda, you have chosen to shift your assemblage point to, if we want to call it being in the state of being a victim. You've shifted it to that point. Therefore, that is the world that you experience. And so, as I said, according to him, if you have a massive shift in your assemblage point, which if I remember would be like, a few inches or half a foot or something, then you would phase out of existence and you'd go to a whole other universe. So he's talking about micro shifts within what we would consider to be the human realm. So that according to him, the assemblage point is on a certain spot on the spinal column in a small area, and it can make micro shifts within that area, and those micro shifts will determine whether or not you are living impeccably, being successful, or being a victim, or whatever it is that you indulge in. The other underlying assumption that he hammers away at, and I'm using my words here, is that everything is a choice. Everything. If you're a victim, it's a choice. You've chosen to shift your assemblage point to do that, to be there. Now the question is why? Why would you do that? Why would somebody choose to do that? It's what I said earlier. If you're coming on late, go back and watch. One of the first things I said was, if you had 100% access to your energy body, it would be one of the most horrific, horrifying, tragic experiences you've ever had in your life. And this is why we indulge. We indulge in certain placements of the assemblage point in order to avoid the horror, the absolute terror of what you would experience if you were 100% aware. It's like in, what is that movie? The Raiders of the Lost Ark, and they open up the Ark and then the things come out and the eyeballs, melt out of your head. Ah! That's what it would be like. Because we indulge in all of these limited ways of being to avoid that. Now, that's his, we could call it mythology, because it really is a mythology, but that's his, his method of teaching, which again is fictional, his fictionalized version. But here's the way I would put it, and I experienced this myself. Now, for years, I would go up to the Sierra Nevada mountains here in California. If you've never been, I strongly recommend going. Places like Kings Canyon and whatever it is, the big lake. Yeah, God, I just can't access words these days. Maybe my assemblage point needs to be shifted. But Sequoia National Park, places like that, I strongly recommend going there. If you can ever get into the backcountry, into the wilderness, it's one of the most powerful places on earth. And I would go there by myself for at least 2 weeks every year. I would usually wait till the end of summer so that all the backpackers would be gone, and I'd have all the wilderness to myself, and I would go 20 miles in from the road and up over 14,000 foot passes, and be in just the middle of utter wilderness. And really crazy things would happen to me. I shared about my Bigfoot experience, which was that was probably the most frightening thing I've ever had in my life, and not just because it wasn't because I saw some big hairy thing. It was a very frightening experience. But towards the end of those trips, I would start to really begin to feel that I was shifting out of this reality. I could feel it. And, I'd have just crazy experiences and crazy dreams, and the veil between this world and the next would start to shift. And I knew the feeling was that if I stayed, I would probably just, I don't know what would happen to me, but I wouldn't be human anymore. That was the feeling I had. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. And here's what I came back with. And I learned this over repeated years of going up and doing this, meditating, not having, you have no idea what it's like. If you've never been away from any kind of technology for more than a few hours or a day, I can promise you don't know what I'm talking about. Because after about day 6 of not having any phone, any television back then, radio, any kind of technology, without having any of that, after about day 6, my head would pop open. And I would go, holy crap, I am being controlled by all of these ideas. Like the idea of money. There are people that die, that get sick and die over the concept of money. Many of you listening to me get all bent out of shape because you don't have enough money. And if I just had enough money, it would all be okay. And you live your life like that. People die like that. That's why people die of rectal cancer. That's why. If you want to know why people get rectal cancer, that's why. The tight ass, the symbolism is right on target there. People who get so wrapped up in money and wanting to, and that your whole existence is about how much money you have. You can end up with, rectal cancer. It's horrible. But, just that in itself, it's just a concept. It has no real existence. If you take dollar bills, you take gold bars, you take diamonds, whatever it is you think is real money. Because, your paper money used to be an IOU from the government for silver. Right? So if you had you used to have silver dollars. They actually used to be silver that was worth $1, which, when that first came out was a hell of a lot of money. And so your paper, $10, $100, that represented a certain amount of silver that was being held in Fort Knox. And so it was an IOU from the government. Has no inherent value, it's just a symbolic piece of paper. But even if you take the things that you think have value, like gold and silver, diamonds, platinum, I don't care, whatever it is, and you go out in the, someplace in New Guinea where, there's still some undiscovered tribes out there. If you go out to someplace in New Guinea and run into some tribe that's never seen any kind of money or heard of it or known anything about it, and you try and give them that, they're going to look at it and maybe it's shiny and maybe it's kind of interesting and maybe I can make a knife out of that. But outside of that, it has zero value. If you're left by yourself in the middle of nowhere and you have money, gold, diamonds, you won't be able to do anything. You won't be able to eat with it. You won't be able to cook with it. You won't be able to wear it. Might be able to wipe your ass with the paper bills, but other than that, that's about it. Because money only exists when two people agree that it has value. Outside of that, it has no value. Meaning that we have these concepts, man. Like the whole world is like living on these concepts, man, that don't have any like real, like, value, man. The hippies were right about that. And people die over these totally arbitrary values. They die over them. Now, you may be saying, and rightly so, that, hey, but Mike, in this world without money, I can't live. You're absolutely right. But here's the interesting thing. If you're able to shift your assemblage point, if we use that symbology, you can shift your assemblage point to a place where money is easy to get. I know, because I've done it. You can get to a point where you can say, you know what, I want this and this and this in my life, and so I need to have X amount of money, so I'm going to make that happen somehow. I don't know how it does, but it does. And it's the same experience in reverse of what I used to experience, which was, that you could never get past a certain amount, and no matter how much money you had, you were always in debt and you were always struggling and it was never enough. That is a place of the assemblage point. It's a place that you indulge. You work to get there. So if all this talk that I give to you about, creating your own life and all that, if the experience that you have from hearing that is that it takes work to get to a place where you're successful, it takes just as much, if not more work, to be exactly where you are. And Castaneda was brilliant at explaining that it was that you choose to, he didn't use the word unconscious, but you unconsciously choose to shift your assemblage point wherever it is that you choose to live in. So, to be able to access 100% of your energy, you need to, as Castaneda put it, live impeccably. It's a brilliant, again, it's just such a brilliant, it's brilliant because it describes perfectly, without any flowery, spiritual garbage. It describes perfectly the practical aspect. So you are made up of energy. You are, in fact, an energetic being. The way that you experience your energy is through your emotions. Your emotions are energy. Last time I was, again, trying to talk about how people overthink things and they're stuck in their intellect, and they argue from their intellect, but they're driven by their emotions, and they're either not aware of it or they're trying to push their emotions aside so they don't deal with it, so that they can say, yes, but I have critical thinking and I think from objective reality, and blah, blah, but they have no idea that they're driven by their own fear and their own feelings, just like the religious people are. Religious people are no different than eggheads who think they have it all put together because they went to college. And you know how much I love education in college. Academics are just as filled with fear and crippled by their own fear as the religionists are. Many of them. I forgot what I was saying. You are an emotional being. You first experience your world through your emotions. Your emotions are the barometer through which yourself can gauge if you are surviving and functioning well. So if you are not able to access your emotions and know what you're feeling at all times, you will be driven by them unconsciously. But to live impeccably means that you have all of your emotions and they do not control you. And that is the horrifying part. When I said in the beginning, if you have access to all of your energy, it would be horrific. It would be your worst possible frightful nightmare. Unless, of course, you've learned to be impeccable to that degree. So, talking about Castaneda, the whole point of his fictional spiritual practice was that when you are able to master the assemblage point and master energy, then you will have access to 100% of your energy, and you will basically become an immortal. You'll basically become a god. He had a different idea about it, but that's basically what he was saying. And so what I want to share with you today is, we've talked a lot about assumptions in the past. If you don't know what your assumptions are, you don't know what your what you believe. If you don't know what your assumptions are, you don't know what your emotional agendas are, which means you don't know what you're doing, literally. But I want to talk about expectations. You have to know what your expectations are of people. This is why passive-aggressive people drive me nuts. I can smell them a mile away, and I froth at the mouth. I froth at the mouth when I smell passive-aggressiveness. Passive-aggressiveness is also another way of saying codependence. So we have three in our reptilian brain stem. We have the primitive ways to survive is fight or flight, right? Which is either you fight it and kill it, or you run away from it, or you fuck it. And then the other one is tend or befriend, which is being passive-aggressive and codependent. Tend or befriend is, okay, I can't run away from the neighboring tribes, I can't kill them, so I will go and kiss their ass. I will pretend to serve them in order to protect myself so they don't kill me. And there are people who live their lives this way, and they see themselves as these incredibly spiritual people. They see themselves as givers, and one of the favorite phrases of these people is, at some point you will hear them say, I don't ask for much, but when I do, I give and I give and I give, and I don't get anything back. That's because you're not giving. Giving means you don't want anything back. You're giving for the joy of giving. You have no expectations of anything coming back to you. If you have the slightest bit of, I'm giving this to get something, you have an expectation. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you know it. Having sex. Having sex is like, when it's good, is when you have two people both having an expectation. And both, as they're seeking to satisfy their expectation, they are satisfying the other person's expectation. So it's the perfect, idea. But, you have a strong expectation. You want to have that, whatever it is, whether feeling of oneness or the physical pleasure or the fireworks that happen at the end, whatever it is, you have an expectation. And knowing what your expectations are will protect you immensely. Immensely. And now I'm using my words, but Castaneda used to talk about it, and I wish I could remember the words. But, it's, in other words, he would say, there were times when he would talk about, he went into some social situation, and Don Juan would say, you should never have done that. You put yourself in grave danger. It's like, what are you talking about? He said, because, I'm using my words, because you went in there with an unconscious expectation. You weren't aware of why you were there, which made you a vulnerable target for other people's expectations to exploit you and use you. This is why, by the way, people who are victims and complain about being a victim and being tortured and sabotaged and taken advantage of and used are at the same time continuously seeking out people who use them and objectify them. That is why, because you have an expectation. You are trying to steal from somebody. whether it's love or approval or sex or money or safety or whatever it is. Now, you may not know that. You may think, but you don't understand what I've been through, and I've had 4 marriages, and all of my wives or husbands have used me, and they beat me, and yeah, but you had an expectation. You wanted something from them, and you weren't honest about it. Because if you were honest about it, you would have gone, wow, this person cannot give me what I want. I am out of here. Because you'd be okay with what you want, and you would go and get it. You would find somewhere to get what you want. So I guess let's put it this way. So there's different ways of attacking it. Each one of these things that I'm going to mention are windows through which you can get in to shift your assemblage point. One is to know what your assumptions are. You assume that the universe is a cold and cruel place. That is your assumption. That's going to shift your assemblage point into the place of cold, cruel universe. You believe that the universe is a loving energy, consciousness that wants your ultimate happiness. Not just if you try and think that, like in some new age nonsense, ridiculous way. But if you actually believe that and take action on that, that will shift your assemblage point to the place where the universe gives you what you need when you go after what you want. But what I really loved about it was that he explained that it takes discipline. Like rigorous. That's why he called his path the path of the warrior. And he would eventually get rid of the word sorcerer, and he would say warrior. And he would say that, you're a warrior, or live like a warrior. He didn't mean go out and kill people. He meant living that disciplined life of disciplining yourself, being aware of what your thoughts and your feelings are, being aware of what your agenda is, what your desires are, what your expectations are, so that you don't put yourself in a scenario where people take your energy from you. And if you are a master of that and you live impeccably, meaning with discipline in these areas, then you have control over how much energy you have, and you have control over what universe you create for yourself. So if you go back and watch if you dig through my channel, by the way, if you don't know how, please figure out how to search on a channel. Find out how to get up the search engine bar within my channel, not in YouTube, but within my channel. And you can type in shamanism or shamanism certification. I have some videos called free shamanism certification videos. And the first thing I teach you is you have to get rid of all victim belief systems. You have to get rid of them. Because if you don't get rid of them, you'll never be able to make use of anything else that I teach. And Castaneda would call that being impeccable, living impeccably. The last thing I'll say about impeccability before I take any questions is, impeccability looks like righteousness on the outside, but it's not. Righteousness is when you don't drink and you don't smoke and you don't lie and you don't harm people and you don't, whatever all commandments are, because you're then a good person, and and that's in order to please some deity out there or something like that, and that's righteousness. But that, Castaneda would say that is not living impeccably, because they're actually trying to, whatever. But to live impeccably looks like that. But it's because by doing so, you keep your energy body intact. When you steal from somebody, you lose a huge amount of energy. You make yourself vulnerable because you, number one, have the assumption that the universe won't take care of you, so you have to go steal in order to get what you need. You lose your ability to empathize with other people and see yourself in them, which then makes you vulnerable to attack, because now you've got your vision of others is narrowed. and your vision of yourself is narrowed, so you're open to attack energetically. It takes a huge amount of energy when you steal, because stealing is lying. You know, it's the same, it's lying because you are going to pretend that you're not stealing. Or you're going to run away from getting caught, whether it's the cops or somebody else. Even your own mind, you're running away from yourself or from something in order not to get caught. It takes a huge amount of energy. You know, Judge Judy said it great. You know, the easiest thing to do is just tell the truth. That way you don't have to remember what your false story is. Because it takes a lot of energy to remember what your lie is. But if you just tell the truth, then you don't have to worry about it. So you don't steal, you don't harm, you don't kill, you don't lie, you don't do all of these things, because to do these things would damage your own energy body and would make you vulnerable to leaking and losing energy, and then your whole goal of achieving full awareness would be thwarted. And worse than that, every time you do that, you shift your assemblage point into a place where it becomes lodged and it becomes harder to move. And he would continuously talk about how the repetitive things that we do and we say, and the inner monologue and all of that stuff, would solidify the assemblage point into a certain space in the body, and then it was really hard to move. And if you didn't move, then you'd be stuck in that spot. And that, for a sorcerer, was the worst place to be, because then you wouldn't be able to achieve awareness. So I'm using Castaneda as, if you're coming on new, I'm not saying that Castaneda was telling the truth. I'm saying he was a brilliant storyteller. He was a fraud, and he was a hypocrite, and all of that. But he channeled some amazing, absolutely brilliant teachings. And if you can read his material about being impeccable, whether you believe in the assemblage point or not, which I don't believe in, but even if you did, I mean, what he teaches is teaching the same thing I am, which is it's about the actions that you take. This universe is a universe of energy, and energy is action. And the actions you take is what stimulates the response in the universe. Or how Castaneda would put it, your actions is what shifts your assemblage point. When you shift your assemblage point, you can enter a completely new reality. Okay? Alright, so maybe that makes sense, maybe it doesn't. I'll take some questions here. Okay, so there's a lot of people here. So remember, again, I don't want to read your comments unless I ask, like, somebody, I didn't know what the assemblage point was and somebody wrote it. Don't want to see your comments. I don't care about your opinion, nothing personal. I only want to deal with questions. If you have questions, please ask them. Alright, so I don't see any questions here. There's one. Lorena Greco, question. What is a practical way of shifting the assemblage point? So again, the assemblage point doesn't exist. That's Castaneda's mythology. But the symbolism is absolutely accurate. As I said, the way to shift the assemblage point is by taking action. Now let me break that down for you, now that you have this understanding. And why does he hammer away at constantly taking action? Because in order to take an action, you have to have an assumption. And your assumptions are not the same as your beliefs. And you may believe that the universe is a cold, cruel place run by beings of light who want to steal your energy and keep you here, reincarnating, or there's a God up there and there's a devil down here who's trying to steal your soul and take it to hell. It's the same thing. It's a victim mentality. If you have that victim mentality, you are going to take action on that victim mentality, like stealing from other people, like becoming passive aggressive, like constantly complaining and being a pain in the ass, by continuing to get involved with people who drain your energy and who steal from you and treat you like garbage. Those are all actions that are taken as a result of the assumption that you live in a cold, cruel universe and it's not fair. and you'll never get your shake. It's the actions that solidify the assemblage point. Okay? So, the way to get the assemblage point to move, the whole point of that is if you do that, you can create a new reality, is by taking actions based on different assumptions. So, if the assumption that you live in a cold, cruel universe is shifting you to create an assemblage point area where you live in a cold, cruel universe, then taking actions from the assumption that the universe loves you, cares about you, and wants you to be happy, meaning take that risk. If you take those risks, regardless of your feeling, that action, continued action, will dislodge the assemblage point and shift it to a new place. And ideally, that new place will be one where you say, you know what I want? I want this, and that costs X amount of money, and I'm going to manifest that, and somehow, a few weeks later, it's not that it magically falls out of the sky. No, it's going to come through normal means. But, a few weeks later, you're going to go, whoa, holy crap. I needed X amount of money, and now I've got it. I'm saying this to you because I've once again experienced it. I'm making this move to, I'm shifting my assemblage point. And I'm making this move to Australia, knowing that on paper it's impossible for me to become a citizen there unless I marry somebody. Outside of that, it's impossible. And I'm going to go make it happen. We'll see. But that's my goal. I am getting rid of all of my stuff. In fact, today I spent all day getting rid of all my stuff. Either giving it away or selling it or recycling it or donating it or something. And, stuff that I've had with me that's been in my garage or somewhere, like computers, computers that I've had for 10 or 15 years that work perfectly good, but, the operating systems won't work on the internet anymore and all that kind of stuff. Giving all that stuff away or recycling it, and it got me thinking about, the gunk that we hold on to energetically. Because holding on to stuff, it really is true. Doing spring cleaning and getting rid of stuff is an energetic release. Just like people who are hoarders. Hoarders, you're seeing exemplified their energy body. They hold on to gunk. Literally they will go, if there's like a plastic cup in the street, some of them even collect garbage. That's the weirdest one. They know it's garbage, but they collect it anyway. But it's the symbology is the same. They are so afraid and they feel so unprovided for by the universe that they symbolize it by gathering a bunch of stuff around them. And we do it too. This is what got me thinking about this and thinking about the energy body. I was talking to my neighbor and telling him what I was doing. He's like, wow, are you going to put stuff in storage? And I'm like, no, I'm getting rid of everything. I'm going to live out of a suitcase. Just going to bring my surfboards and whatever I can fit into, one or two, travel bags, and that's it. And he's like, wow, that must be so freeing. And I started thinking about it. It really is freeing. We get so much of our security on how much stuff we have. I can remember being 25 years old, and because this is how I was taught, we would go out and buy a whole, kitchen full of plates and bowls, and, there was two of us, if I had a guy roommate. And living by myself, I can remember in my late 20s, having an apartment with, kitchen stocked full of, and I'm like, I'm one of those guys, I have one plate and one bowl and one knife and one fork and one spoon. And that's because that's all I need. I just rinse it off when I'm done and it's there, And I think about that. It's, the stuff that we carry around to think that it gives us some kind of whatever, So anyway, that's what got me thinking. I have no idea what the question was. The practical way to shift the assemblage point is to take practical action and be disciplined about it, repeatedly taking action. The most powerful thing you can do is to take what's called contrary action. Easiest one is, if you're afraid to go after what you want, do the opposite of what your fear is telling you to do. And keep doing the opposite. Get used to being afraid and taking action even though it scares you. You know, that is why my ancestors had the phrase, those who die in battle go to Valhalla. Not those who feel empowered, or those who are full of self-empowered feelings, or those who are brave. No, they didn't say anything about your feelings. You could literally be shitting and pissing in your breeches as long as you go and are willing to die in battle for what you want. Those are the people that go to Valhalla. And what is Valhalla? Valhalla is the place of Odin. He who is who burns with the fire of self-awareness. Woden. He who is filled with Wod. It's not because of any righteousness or any of the other stupid, ridiculous fucking garbage that the Odinists and the, you know, the fascist, you know, neo-heathens are into. Not that all of them are those things, but there are a few out there. None of that stupid, ridiculous garbage. Odin is he who has achieved his full awareness. He has full access to his energy body, which is why the runes, the mysteries, the principles of how the universe vibrates was revealed to him. That's why. He died to himself. Sacrificed himself to himself. It still amazes me. People go, where does it say he died? Amazes me. He died to himself. Sacrificed himself to himself. So the practical thing to do is to take repeated, disciplined action, especially if it goes against the fears and the feelings that are trying to tell you to stay sitting on your ass and being afraid and blaming others. Go out and get that thing. Go and get yourself in debt. Go and put down that down payment for that apartment. Go buy that course that you've always been wanting to get from me. Go, whatever it is, go sell everything and put everything into, a suitcase and go off to a foreign country and see what the hell happens. Those kinds of things are things that you can practically do to shift your assemblage point. The other thing is to do energy work. And if you do energy work like the celestial qigong, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be the free qigong on the channel, or doing yoga, or whatever the hell else. Tai Chi, whatever. If you do that stuff and take that energy and use that to fuel your fearless actions towards your goals, that's, in my experience, that's the most powerful way to live. Let's see, Evan Ansus Uruz Laguj. It's not a question. I don't know who you're asking. I'm trying to read the assumption behind the question, and I could be wrong, so I'll keep my mouth shut for a moment. Cosmos of Compassion. Why couldn't they just stop abusing? It goes both ways. As long as you keep saying that to yourself, you are going to shift your assemblage point where that's where you'll always be. I have to tell you, I get so full of I just have no empathy for that mindset. You're taking zero responsibility for the fact that, why is it that you, let's assume that you are filled with, surrounded by people who abuse you. Why do you think you have people around you that abuse you and other people don't? Why is it that I have the experience that nobody fucks with me? Why is it that I have that experience and you have this other one? Is it just arbitrary? Are you a victim? Did the universe just decide that you were going to have a shitty life and I wasn't? You have to take responsibility. If you don't take responsibility, that will never change. And who gives a fuck what they do? Here's the thing that you may not understand. If you are empowered within yourself, and if you have closed the hole in your aura, which you do have one, If you are being abused and that keeps happening to you, you have boundary issues, which means you are going out trying to get things from people, and the only people that you can try and get it from are the people who also have boundary issues, which are the abusers. Because you can't get it from people who aren't, because you don't believe you're worthy of it. This is the recipe for being abused. And yeah, maybe as a little kid, you didn't have any choice, but even then we got to go back to what was your soul wanting to choose to be in that family. But either way, either you are a victim of circumstance, in which case nothing means anything, or you have full responsibility for your life, which means you can change it. And then the middle path is what most people do, which is they sit around and complain. They don't take responsibility for being where they are, and they do nothing to change it. And so they complain, and every time you complain, you reinforce where your assemblage point is, which means whatever that is. So it takes as much energy to be poor and miserable and a victim as it does to work to be successful. It takes the same amount of energy. And every single moment you are investing in something, whether it's freedom or bondage, you are investing in it. So Cosmos of Compassion, even your word, Cosmos of Compassion, that's your projection. I already know that's what you want. You want the cosmos, and you want people to give you a universe of compassion for you. You may see it as you have compassion for everybody, but if you did, you wouldn't see yourself as an abused victim. I can see in that cosmos of compassion, you're hurting, and you want people to give compassion to you. You need to fix that. Nobody's going to do that for you. Shiny Beast, question: does it happen that you go through some energetic detox cleansing when starting energy work like celestial qigong? Everybody's different. Some people will. You may go through some energetic detox. Physical cleansing definitely does happen. I had one guy that I was teaching who was, interestingly enough, he was already a master of Neigong and energy work, and he did my celestial qigong, and then he started talking about how he'd never felt that before, and he said, did you ever have your calluses come off the bottom of your feet? I said, yeah, that means that the meridians are now finally working and all the energy is coming to the palms. Like, I've been lifting a lot of weights, but when I was doing a lot, my hands are still very soft, but when I was doing the spirit fighting, a lot of energy, and I would hold somebody's hand, especially women, they would go, oh my God, your hands are so soft. They're like a baby's. That means that all of the meridians have come to the hand and all of the energy is coming to the hand. This is why Lao Tzu talks about becoming like a baby and the strength that babies have. That's what he's talking about. So yes, the answer is yes. Cosmos of Compassion, question: doesn't abuse go both ways? I already answered that. Couldn't they just stop abusing? Of course they could. But couldn't you just stop being in the way of their abuse? You want everybody else to change, but you're not willing to change. It's never going to work that way. Saying doesn't it go both ways means that you're taking zero responsibility for choosing to be a victim. Okay, so Cosmos of Compassion keeps going. So I welcome your questions, but before we go further, let me again tell you what will be helpful for you. If you can be able to listen to your own assumptions and your own emotions, because I know what you want to do right now is you want to defend the right to be a victim. You want me to stand next to you and point to your abusers. I get it. I won't do that for you. I acknowledge that you were abused. I acknowledge that you were beat. I acknowledge that that was horrible and that you didn't deserve that. But I want you to examine why you want to defend that. and why it's more important for you to identify as being abused than it is to say, you know what, I want to actually overcome that and not have that bother me. Because you could go that way as well. So, how can one get beat for decades and then you tell me it's my fault? Well, how can you tell me that you got beat for decades and it wasn't your fault? If you got beat for decades, it means you're not a 4-year-old child. A 4-year-old child can't leave. They can't get out. Decades means 20s, 30s, 40s. How is it possible in the modern age, and I don't know if you're a woman, but you're coming across like a woman to me, I could be wrong. How is it that an adult woman in the Western world who has access to computers and phones doesn't have the ability to take themselves out of that situation? So what do you mean it's not your fault? How could it not be your fault? For staying. Maybe you weren't responsible for first time you got hit. Okay, you weren't responsible for that. You didn't deserve that. But why wasn't that the, whoa, holy crap, I am out of here? So what do you want? How does that serve you? We could debate back and forth whether or not you have power or you were a victim or who's at fault. But here's the fact of the matter, and this is what woke me up. I have to look at things this way, otherwise I can't function in the world. I have to look at what I have power over and what I don't have power over. And then once I determine what I have power over, that tells me what I can do to change things. You know, the things that I don't have power over, I don't waste my time on. Like I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to think I probably don't have any power to beat into you the awareness that I have, because I don't think that you're desirous of it or ready to hear it or able to hear it. But I'll try. As I said, you have two choices. You can either choose to see the world from the vantage point of a victim, in which case it is all meaningless, all of it. Or you can choose to see yourself from the vantage point of someone who is fully responsible for what they create, in which case you can change it. And I'm here to tell you that it's not going to be easy, because your old imprinting and your old experience is going to want to keep you trapped in that assemblage point. And you will have to put huge amounts of effort, and it may be more than you think you can handle. People, that's why a lot of people commit suicide, and I'm not saying you should, but a lot of people do because it feels too painful, and the pain is moving out of that assemblage point to a new vantage point. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and give you a bunch of new age, if you just love and light and it's all okay, and just don't hate anybody and it'll all be okay. I'm not going to give you that garbage, because it's not true in my life. It's never been the case for me. I had to work my ass off my whole life, sometimes from moment to moment. Sometimes I had to go 10 seconds at a time. I can remember times in my life where I went 10 seconds at a time, or I'm going to jump out the window. I won't jump out the window for another 10 seconds. I won't blow my brains out for another 10 seconds. I'll go 10 seconds. I made it 10 seconds. I can go another 10 seconds. And then 10 seconds becomes a minute becomes an hour becomes a day. I don't recommend going more than a day at a time. But you can do that. So you're either choosing to see yourself as a victim, or you're choosing to take full responsibility, in which case, when you take full responsibility, what shifts is you go, okay, I don't know how to change this, but I know there is a way to do it, and I'm determined to find the way. What am I doing to keep myself in this situation? If you keep asking yourself that question, you will find an answer. If you keep asking the question, how can one get beat for decades and it not be my fault? You will never leave that. And I will have no sympathy for you. Because the tools are there for you as they are for me and everybody else. It won't be easy. but you can change it. This is one of the main things I do here. Okay, moving on. Expanse Ec 24 question. Will semen retention unlock the push to change your reality? It might, but if you don't have a teacher, you're wasting your time. I talk about this a lot. Semen retention is, for the most part, completely meaningless. It's a total waste of time. Because semen retention only works if it's done without any effort. So if you're having to hold back and not jerk off or not have sex or not touch yourself or not have an orgasm, or if you're having nocturnal emissions and you wake up with an erection in the middle of the night, and your retention is totally meaningless. The only way is to find a method whereby you can do the method, like do some kind of energetic work, and I teach one called Sat Kriya. If you're really interested in it, you can find it on the thunderwizard.com site. You'll have to sign up as a $25 subscriber to get to it. But you don't have to get it from me. You can get it anywhere. SAT, here, I'll put it down here for you. You can go find it if you really want to do this. Sat Kriya. Go look for it. If you do something like that and you do it under a teacher's guidance and you do it right, you won't have to try and retain anything. Anything other than that is a total waste of your time. Okay? It comes from a victim mentality. Because people who are into, unless they are training in an actual tradition and they know what they're doing, unless you're doing that, like if you're learning it from a book or learning it from the internet, you're not learning an actual tradition. And unless you're doing that, then what's happening is you're coming from the assumption that you are being drained of energy, which isn't true. And that every time you release energy, you're being drained of energy, which isn't true. It is true if you don't have boundaries. If you don't have strong psychological boundaries, then things like having sex or masturbating to porn or whatever, even just having, bad friendships, that will drain you of energy. But that's only because you haven't fixed your own boundaries, and it's because you're not aware of how you are unconsciously wanting to steal other people's energy. So the only way your energy gets stolen is if you're trying to steal energy from other people. And I know you may not know that, but that's what I mean when I talk about being passive aggressive, being codependent. That's what all codependent relationships are, is people stealing from each other. And there's one side is a victim. One of the thieves is the victim. The person with the big bloody face and who can't leave the abuser. And I love him, and if he would only get some help, you're a thief. You don't know it, but you're trying to steal. Because if you weren't trying to steal, you'd be with somebody who didn't beat you. Period. End of story. So if you're with somebody who's abusing you, it's because you're a thief. Don't think I'm judging you. I'm just putting it in extreme terms to understand what the dynamic is. There's no judgment there. I want you to shift the way that you think about yourself. Okay? Ghost in the Machine question. Today while in the shower I was thinking about the order of the runes and I couldn't remember the Yera rune for the whole shower. Is there a lesson I can learn from this? I honestly don't know why that is. I forget stuff all the time, so nothing's coming to mind. I think maybe it's unconsciously a rune you need to work on. Like if I'm talking on the phone and the phone goes dead, that's a sign the universe is saying that what I just said or what I was about to say is really important. So if you're forgetting a rune, it means that that's the rune that you're unconsciously fighting. Which means the one you have to work with. Cosmos of Compassion question. Question, my mom, I don't know how old you are. She's been hitting me for years. I need to know how old you are before I can judge your situation. She stopped because I punched her in the face last year. Oh, good for you. But I'm still dealing with it. I don't know what that means. If you get hit long enough, you'll feel soulless and broken. You won't feel soulless, you will be soulless. This is your mom, so I don't know how old you are. You said decades. Does that mean you're 20 years old? If you're 20 years old, what the fuck are you still doing living with your physically abusive mother? Get the fuck out of there, man. If you're 10 or 12 years old, then you call the police. And the police will come and take you away and put you in a safe place. Either way, there's a way out of it. I don't know what you want from me. It's not that I haven't experienced what you're going through. I have. It's just if I get into the emotional bullshit that you want me to get into and co-sign your victimhood, it's never going to change. And you need help. You definitely need help. You need to go to a counselor and get counseling. Get the fuck out of that house. Go find a counselor and get some help. Otherwise, you will become your mom. How do I know? Because you punched your mom in the face. That's how I know. All right, moving on. So, Cosmos of Compassion, you can keep asking all these questions. So you're 27 years old, female. You're 27 years old. What do you want from us? What do you want from us? You're almost 30. Come on. I mean, I feel for you that you've been so emotionally damaged that you can't leave your mom's house. But holy shit, you should have been out of there when you were 17. You've been there you've chosen to stay there 10 years longer. And you want us to back up that, when you were a kid, you were a kid. You couldn't help that. Okay? You were a kid. But once you hit, legal age to get the hell out of there and have your own life and go get a job as a dishwasher somewhere, for minimum wage and living in a, somebody's closet or renting a room from somebody, there's no excuse. There's no excuse. You have 2 legs, you have 2 arms, can you speak? There's no excuse. You chose to stay there, and I know that it was difficult, and I know that those fucked up families make it hard to leave, and you don't understand unconsciously how you keep wanting to get pulled back into it. I understand. But I'm trying to slap some reality into you. Sorry for the pun there. But come on, knock it off. You're 27 years old. Go get your life together. Go get some counseling. Seriously. You've been abused. You can find online right now, you can find people who will help you learn how to deal with being abused. You can go and get free counseling. It's all over the place. If you're not willing to do that, then I don't believe you're serious, and I think you want to stay a victim. So if you want, my help, once you go do that, then I will be happy to answer more of your questions. Until then, I recommend that you stay on my channel and watch my videos about taking your life back and taking control of your life. Okay? All right. Boy, I really went on a tear there, didn't I? All right, so I'm going to take a short break here, and if there are any questions, we'll talk about it, and I'm going to talk to you about the energy body and how you can tap into that power right now. I've been teaching this online for 10 years, and it's because it works. Hi, I'm Michael Denny of SpiritTao.com, and this is Celestial Negong Part 1. Celestial Negong means that this is power that is descending from heaven. And the idea is that we are all microcosms of the entire universe. You are the entire universe, and everything around you is simply the projection. You are looking within yourself. So when you look up into the stars at night, you're actually looking deep within your own body. When you look at the sun, the moon, the trees, the flowers, you're looking within yourself. This is Negong. And so what we're doing is we're simply releasing that infinity from within us. You are tapping into and releasing the power that is within our own body, our own cells, our own organs. So one of the reasons that I'm making this DVD is in the hope that the essence and the spirit of the teaching of the Shang Qing arts can be taught to the world at large, and it is my hope that the core essence of what the Shang-Qing tradition is will continue to live and grow and evolve. As we move on into the Aquarian age, everything is changing. I don't need to tell you that. The entire world is changing, and what we are seeing now is that if people hold on to external things, they are very challenged in life. And those who are making the transition into the next phase that we are moving into in the world as we approach 2012, those who look within and find their source of strength from within, those are the people who are getting the most out of life and will make the transition into the next phase of evolution most comfortably. It is my belief that the Shang-Qing tradition is one method whereby human beings can evolve into the next level of being in the most comfortable fashion and be able to take advantage of the rapid, energetic, mental, and spiritual changes that are going on in the world today. Alrighty. Yes, in case you can't tell, that was me 10 years ago. Alright, let's see, what else do we got here? Okay, I don't see any more questions. You know, you asked one question, Cosmos of Compassion, how do you get your soul back after abuse? The answer is with a lot of work. There's not a magic pill out there. You're going to have to do a lot of work on yourself. But the first thing you need to do is get the fuck out of there. There's no reason, there's no excuse for you to be 27 years old living with your mom. There's no excuse. You can go out and get a job working, washing dishes somewhere. You can do it. So that's the first thing. Take action and get the hell out of there. And then go to a lot of counseling and go to a lot of groups and get some help. And spend some time working on it. All right, that's it for me. I don't see any more questions, so I'm gonna go. So, I hope you got something out of that. These links up here are here for you to click on. Don't ask me where do I find this and how much does this cost. Courses.thunderwizard.com should give you a link to absolutely everything, all my books, all my videos, my teachings, how to have a session with me, how to get an astrology reading, a rune reading. And neo.thunderwizard.com, if you haven't, I'm amazed at the amount of people that have not gotten all four of those tools. If you want to get your life back, it is my sincere belief that if you practice the four tools on neo.thunderwizard.com, that you can begin the process of doing what I've been talking about, which is you can decide how you want your reality to be. But you have to understand it. You got to know where you're going, it's your soul desire. You have to have the power to get there, which is the Qigong. You have to know how the universe responds. You need to know the 5 rules that give you the ability to shift the reality around you. And you need to have access to a community, which is part of what we're doing here. Those are the 4 things that you need. Also, subscribe and hit the bell button so you can be notified whenever I've got stuff coming up. So it's now almost exactly 2 weeks before I'm out of here. Let's see, the last week I'm here and the first week that I'm there, I have no idea if I'm going to be on doing a whole lot, but it is my goal to get back on and doing things and to create a community over at thunderwizard.com. Go there. And we can do some really in-depth live Q&As, and I'll do things like schedule it so you know when it's happening. And there might be a bunch of other cool stuff going on too, like doing some seminars out there. So if anybody's out there in Eastern Australia or anywhere in Australia, if you want to, I'll let you know if I'm going to be doing any volunteer seminars and teaching. I'm looking forward to doing some of that again. All right, that's it for me. I'll check and see if there's any last minute questions. Nope. That's all. All right, guys. Talk to you later.